Is video game music real music? I'm Kevin the Golden Bolt here on this episode of the Crubcast with my co-hosts Moriarty.
Hello.
Trav Guy.
Woo!
And Mr. Wolf Chaos-san.
That's me.
What do you guys think? Let's go in order. Sean, is video game music real music?
No, yes, it is, absolutely.
You almost said no. Just end the episode right there. Just cut it.
No,
beautiful. So, Sean, tell us a little bit about why you think yes before we continue.
So the reason that I think yes is because when you think about it, sure, there's ambience to a lot of these video games that we play, but I've caught myself numerous times just like humming songs from, say, like Banjo-Kazooie, which includes multiple instruments. I've listened to a lot of Mick Gordon, who does a lot of like guitar stuff that I'm really into. I've listened to, the reason I even thought of this topic was I was talking to somebody at the gym because I was listening to the Quake soundtrack. And I was
Which
talking
one?
to somebody, the first one, the one with Nine Inch Nails.
The one with one song?
No. There's a Quake.
Are you sure it
which
wasn't
one is
Sonic Mayhem?
It was not Sonic Mayhem. The song we were listening to was Castle of the Damned.
Wow. Actual ambient stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
So, and he was like, oh, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's from Quake. And he was like, oh, so that's not even real music. And so we kind of got into like a real deep discussion about that. Because he was like, oh, that, it doesn't count as music. It's not really real. And I'm like, it is, because music doesn't just have to be confined to this little box that we try so hard to. I'll get into it later.
It's the same discussion as are video games art, which is as a fun fact, I wrote my junior year research paper on that topic, because that was right when it was the big discussion point. And that was like when everyone was finally saying, yeah, of course it is, instead of it being a debate. And I still have most of that essay, but it's one of those questions where the answer is obviously yes, of course it is. There are actual musicians that we know that do video game music now. Everything in the Sonic series, for example. Trav, name a good video game song, period.
Okay. I think a really good period is the 90s. Because I'm chewing. I'm covering up my face.
Oh, that's why that's there. I
didn't think I'd be talking this soon.
So for those in the audio realm.
Yeah, for the audio listeners at home, I took a screenshot of my face and just copied my mouth because I was chewing.
I'm not going to lie. I thought I was like having a stroke for a second.
I was very confused,
like,
but I was like, do I acknowledge this or do I let it happen?
I was like, am I dying? Is this it?
So... Sorry, I didn't mean to start this off this way. I just thought I had enough time to finish my burrito.
Beautiful.
It's the end of it's the end of that one episode of what's the name of the show?
Screenshot it.
The spooky door, but the Twilight Zone.
Oh,
I thought I had time.
Yeah, no, that's just Trav Essence's Twilight Zone. I'm not explaining that.
Yeah,
but you understand.
So when you ask about like when does video game music? Well, hold on. So I perceive the question as when does video game music start becoming real music in like
I like that
your
question
perspective.
Better. That's a better question.
Oh, okay. What did you say originally?
I don't care. We go with that.
Yeah,
okay,
just
cool.
Go.
Yeah,
just talk.
So like when I started thinking about like when did video game music start becoming real, quote unquote, was when it started using CD quality. So PlayStation era, back when you could actually package in MP3 WAV formats into your CDs. That feels like cheating as an answer, I'll be honest. But I think that did help in winning people over from like public perception, at least starting to.
Yeah.
Because I think that, especially when you look at, what was the guy that did the soundtrack for, it was like a wizard game on the NES.
Spyro?
He also did Pictionary.
I know who you're talking about.
Shoot.
Tim
something.
Yeah.
Pictionary NES musician. If you are listening to this and you have no idea what I'm looking up. Yeah. Timothy Follin, Follin. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, look it up. It's spectacular.
Why'd you go so hard with Pictionary?
Yeah. But he also did the soundtrack for another game. It had like a wizard on the cover. I don't remember what it was called. But like that dude knew what he was doing. He was not just taking like music theory and bringing it over to the NES. He was like using it as his own instrument, which that might not be the best way to describe it. So I think that that already started as early as the NES, but it didn't. I don't think that it started winning over public favor until PlayStation era.
Yeah, because I remember
Solstice. Thank you,
Stuart Copeland. I remember he did like one of the Spyro soundtracks, and
I think the first three, maybe the first.
Yeah,
four.
the first three. Did he do Enter the Dragonfly?
He might have done Enter the Dragonfly.
But I remember like that happening, and my dad brought it up because like I would play it on like the big screen TV, and my dad like somehow like knew that he made it. He's like, "Oh, I didn't know they made real music for these types of things anymore."
I remember having that same conversation with my mom.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because I'm like, who is Stuart Copeland? And then he explained the Police, and then like he played one song, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I think that was really my intro to, video game music is music. That moment has always stuck with me because I remember I was on the icy hub world or an icy level. And that's when he brought it up. And I don't know. It's just a fun memory. Anyway, Moriarty, video game music.
Boy, right. So I think if we're talking about today, anybody who asks this question doesn't know what they're talking about, right? Like just the sheer asking of the question highlights the ignorance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said answering the question. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, and just by asking the question, I think that you're highlighting your ignorance, right? We have entire games that have been done by Hans Zimmer now. He did Call of Duty Modern Warfare and
Crisis 2.
Crisis 2, he did Crisis 2. Not Crisis as well, but Crisis number 2.
Crisis 2 had a baller soundtrack, too.
Yes, incredibly good.
Amazing.
You got Mick Gordon doing all the Doom stuff. You have, early, as we mentioned, Quake with Trenton Reznor, right? I mean, the creator or
Sonic
I guess
Mayhem, Quake 2.
progenitor of industrial music showing up to do a aesthetic, that fit Quake. And there's no question anymore, right? When you have people who work at Juilliard making music for Deus Ex Human Revolution, it is music, right? And there's no
soundtrack.
Right.
There's no more question.
So
it's just not a question anymore.
Then let's jump to what, in your opinion, Em, was the moment that it became real music to you in your mind?
So it's really difficult, right? Because I think this is a thing about age, right? If you are older and you heard chiptune music, then you went, oh, that's just squonks and squeaks and it's meaningless. But anybody who grew up afterwards knows that da-da-da-da-da-da is one of the most iconic songs of modern history, right? It's been heard by more people and it's remembered by more people, and it's probably the most hummed thing on the planet, right? I would bet more people sing that in America than any other song on any given week.
Well, I mean, give it another generation, it'll be something skibbity.
No, it'll probably still be Mario. It'll probably still
No, let me have this.
No, I'm not letting you take it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail that.
Don't lie to me.
My point being that music's always been music, and I think this is a question of people listening today to hyper pop and funk, and even taking it so far as saying this sort of ambient music like lowercase, and saying, "Oh, that's not music," and that's the same question as somebody like a Roger Ebert saying, "Oh, that's not art. Video games can never be art." And it's not a question, right? There are plenty of games that are art, and the idea that, because it is interactive, it is no longer art, has been disproven even by the art world. So, it's music. Of course it's music. And when did it become music? The moment that it was sound.
Okay.
Let's save that for another clickbait podcast thumbnail down the line of "Are video games art?"
I don't think we can get away with that one. I think that's too done.
Okay, then hold on. We could do "Video games aren't art," and then we'd say, "Yeah, they are,"
and then end it. Just end it right there.
Try make a face for that thumbnail.
Yes,
right now.
There we go.
now.
Perfect. I was gonna say.
Hold on, let me try again. Sorry, don't mean to.
I was gonna say while Trav does.
There we go.
Okay. That's
sorry, audio listeners. I didn't mean that.
if you want to listen to Trav screaming in the audio realm, you can go to crub.org. You can find all of us in the audio realm every episode, outside of some of our bonus episodes, which are only available at youtube.com/@crubofficial. We'll make that an emote for our Twitch streams at twitch.tv/crub_official, where we stream these shows live every
for
Tuesday
my face.
At 7 p.m. Eastern with an exclusive pre and post show. What else do I have to plug? Nothing for now. I was going to say, when we were talking about Spyro, there's a funny story that I have that I think I also heard someone else have, so I may have subliminally stolen this it now, I think, but I think I had it too. Which was that every time I heard of Stuart Copeland was the musician, the composer of the Spyro soundtracks, because I wasn't a huge Spyro kid. I had a PS1, but I didn't have a memory card, so I only played the first 4 worlds of Spyro 1 and then never anything else. But one of my buddies in middle school and high school was a huge, huge fan. And so he would mention, Stuart Copeland. And I don't know what it was, but every time I heard of Stuart Copeland, the drummer from The Police, I thought it was the Def Leppard drummer. And I was always so impressed that, the dude's missing an arm, and he's composing video game music really well, and he's also in a really good band. And I was like, that's really cool. Now I know that's not the case. It's just a cop. So, hey, whatever. Yeah. But I think someone else has had that thought as well. Someone in the YouTube.
That just connected in my head. What?
Because he's in the police.
You don't have to explain. You don't have to explain. I'm just dumbfounded.
But I was going to say, for me, I've always had a weird journey with music in that, for some reason, it took a really long time for it to connect with me as a greater art form. I knew it was. But I didn't really actively listen to a lot of music in my younger childhood. It took until GTA San Andreas with their rock soundtrack with Welcome to the Jungle and Mother and White Wedding Part 1, which, by the way, there's still not a Part 2. And all these songs that I really was there's something that's hit me as music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I had a very similar arc there.
And in the same vein, video game music was a lot of the music that I would think of when I was thinking of music at that point, because I'm a nerd. But I still don't think super deeply about a lot of video game songs. They don't stick in my memory. So I was going to say, for me, it's actually probably more recent, because I knew they were great, but it's not probably until my YouTube era that I had to start analyzing the music and had to start realizing, this is composed really well, even if I don't know what good composition is, One
it's
example,
pleasing nonetheless.
Yeah, right. One example that's a recent game that I want to highlight is Octopath Traveler 2, a game I started recently as my for me game that I'm not doing for content, and here I am talking about it for content. The music in that game is just absolutely stellar. It's fully orchestrated. They have multiple bands across the world doing this music. And it's so good, while following, from what I understand, the compositional chord progression structure that is common in Japanese orchestration. So it's very jazzy, and it's to the point that there are several songs that sound like other Nintendo songs. Not that Octopath is a Nintendo game, but you can start hearing the similarities. And I think in this recent era of mine, now that I'm noticing stuff like that, I'm like, man, I appreciate it even more as an art form, because you start hearing, that's the Smash Ultimate theme, pretty much 1-to-1, and then it slightly changes. Or, that's the main theme of Breath of the Wild, and then it goes down instead of up. It's incredible. So I wanted to highlight that one. And then I was going to say, in the greater sense, I think it's around the time that we had proper recording devices that it maybe became more of an art form in a wider sense, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to listen to these songs without booting up the game, going into a level, and then standing there and hoping there's no background, sound effects.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's a reason that, half of the LPs printed nowadays are video game soundtracks. And it's because of that push.
Yeah, we all want to hear that song, but we want to hear it without the bloops and bleeps on top of it.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it a little bit more, because the question of when does it become music? And while I feel that it is music much in the same way that the moment you call art, it is art, I think perhaps I would say Monkey Island 2. And the reason is because that's the first one that has dynamic music instead of music loops. It used the LucasArts iMuse thing where they would allow it to have music that they would create, and then as you did things and went into places, the music was changed. And that's always kind of the music that I really enjoy the most. Perhaps my favorite piece, when somebody says, hey, what's your favorite, video game music? The first thing that pops into my head is the Half-Life soundtrack, Song 8, which is just this super pumped up metal song that feels, Song 8. I don't know what it's called.
Oh, okay.
It's just this like da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, 90 seconds long. It would probably go ultra viral on TikTok, right? Like it's just this short, great, hard-hitting thing. It's really good, and it gets you pumped. And, in a game like Half-Life where it's primarily silent and you're just kind of wandering around and, the most you might get is the ambience of whatever's in the background and occasionally a bullet.
Sorry, I have more thoughts. I'll let you finish.
When you're in that sort of an environment, right, and to then suddenly have this really hard music pumping up, it feels really good and it gets into you. And I've always had that sort of stuck in my head because of that. And all of these games where you have this dynamic or I guess adaptive soundtrack has always been the thing that sticks with me the most, even though if you were to follow it a little bit further back, I would say, Sonic 2 or Mario is maybe my most fond memory of a song. Listening to, the Green Hills soundtrack, like that's what everybody,
Hill. I have to be
Emerald Hill, whatever it is in Sonic, right? Listening to these things and listening to Mario, man, right? Like those are the ones that bring you back.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was going to say, leading into this, I don't know about your thoughts on the Souls game. This is unrelated to what we talked about in the pre-stream. Pre-show, which you could see live on twitch.tv sometimes. Wait, where are we? Twitch.tv/Crub_official. Anyways,
yes.
My thoughts are that Dark Souls does something that Half-Life does, where most of the game is entirely silent, and it's not until you get to, in the case of Dark Souls, it's a boss fight, and in Half-Life, it's really just more scripted cinematic events, I guess. That's when the music picks up, and it's not music that was intended to loop. You can tell by listening to it that this is not meant to be repeated. It has an outro. It doesn't just fade out, which a lot of video game songs, at least from that era, definitely didn't do. They were meant to be played over and over. And I think that really I was just going to compliment your point of bringing up Half-Life, because I think you're totally right, and I didn't think about that. Because these were definitely songs, regardless of how it's perceived, these are definitely songs that were intended to have a traditional musical structure of a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, and they do not loop. You do not hear them again. They pop up to give you that sort of feeling and vibe of being in that sewer or being on, that plateau or whatever it is. I think that's really cool. You do get this a lot. It's versing that to something like a Doom or Doom Eternal, the 2016 Doom, where you have music all the time, and it does kind of pump up during the fights, but it's really intended to be listened to during the fights with music that leads you from arena to arena being less important. Whereas in a Half-Life, that's the only music that really shows up. I just think that adaptive music is really interesting, and we see this more and more as games go on. We've got, I guess it's more in like the bigger open world type things, like a Far Cry or a Metro or
I was even going to highlight one.
Yeah.
One I was going to highlight was the two most recent Zelda games, not just because of the fact that they have that contextual music, but because they then have been able to develop the history of Zelda music, which is, a very lengthy, renowned history where they built an entire game, Skyward Sword, off of the idea of we're not going to give you Zelda's Lullaby until the very end. And it works. And so for a game like Breath of the Wild to give you like little bleeps and bloops again, almost little just notes here and there that make you think, did I just hear the Temple of Time a little bit? Did I just hear X iconic song, Y iconic song? And it makes that emptiness of that world feel more intentional, which, it is in that game's case. And then obviously then there's the ability for it to become driving music, not in the sense of driving a car, but it drives you to do something, because that's another issue that video game music usually has to tackle. It can be good music, but it also has to drive the player to keep going. It has to fit the agency of the game. So in the case of a Zelda in Breath of the Wild, there's suddenly there's a guardian, and when you hear the music change, you're like, oh god, like I need to get the hell out of here. Or in the case of a game I'll throw out Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight's a 2D side scroller, so you only have one direction you can go most of the time. But that music is composed entirely in the NES sound font. Although it uses 2 of the Famicom channels that weren't on the NES. That's some deeper stuff that doesn't matter.
Cheating.
But it, like the rest of Shovel Knight, it restricted itself to almost exclusively that NES audio palette and visual palette, just for the artistic intent of, if we're going to be a retro revival, let's actually do it. But let's do what we would imagine an NES game would look like in our minds as kids. And the fact that all those songs are baller, they are so good, and every remix of them is incredible. The Propeller Knight theme is one of my favorite video game themes ever, and it works in every remix.
I was just thinking of that very same one when you were talking about it.
Have you heard the Pocket Dungeon version of that one? The puzzle game one?
I have not, no.
Really good. It's like a lo-fi, almost a trap version of it, and it's really incredible. Still Jake Kaufman, still Vert.
I laugh, but that sounds great.
It's really, really good. And every single time that you're playing any stage in Shovel Knight, again, it's driving you forward, even if forward is to the right, to make you want to save Shield Knight, to make you want to get to the end of the game. And it's hard for a lot of games to have to balance being a good song, being a good video game song, and being a good song in a video game. Sonic does it incredibly well, probably better than anybody, honestly.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, they do it very well.
There's a lot of games that do all sorts of... I guess there's different implementations, right? So you have like the Halo version where there is this sort of one giant set piece song that everybody knows, right? Like everybody knows that, and we all know it gets covered. You know, there was Jeff Plays Guitars version of it. It's incredible.
We had the Too Many Games T-Pose.
Awesome.
Too Many Games.
Yeah, the T-Pose.
The world's biggest crowd of T-posing Halo singers in history.
Which I think is where Trav came from, right?
That's where he was summoned.
I wouldn't be here without it.
Trav came from a different T-pose. We then did did our T-pose.
No, he was born
I'm rewriting
there,
history.
and then he came back. Yeah, he was born there.
So different T-pose, but nonetheless. So like that Halo, music, and again, if you haven't listened to Jeff Plays Guitars version of the Halo theme played in the Doom version, holy shit, is it incredible! It's wildly good, and the fact that you can do that,
amazing covers,
yeah. And the fact that you can do that is really truly just wild, right? But then throughout the rest of the game, I can't tell you a single song that isn't the theme song of Halo and like point it out, right? It all becomes sort of ambient background noise versus something like a Command and Conquer, which has Frank Klepacki, who did all of their music, and every one of those songs, especially like the Red Alert theme and things like that, these are all songs that you can listen to in your car, right? Even though they are by all virtues ambient. And it's sort of interesting to me because that song or those songs were things that were meant to be listened to because you're sitting there staring at little men walking back and forth and
And I'll jump off that. Sean, I want to get back to you because your camera's back now. And before I do that, speaking of that, we're now in the era where a lot of video game music is also being designed to be listenable as real music. So I'm going to shout out Cassette Beasts. Because when you do the fusion mechanic where you and your partner fuse into a new Pokemon of sorts, in the boss fights or in general, it turns whatever battle theme you were in into a vocal remix. So you hear the singer come over top and they're singing these corny, I called it butt alternative instead of butt rock type music. And it's all really, really good. Like the lyrics are corny, but it all works. And it drives you in the gameplay because all the lyrics are meant to be something that matches the story of what you're doing. And so it sounds kind of, dorky in context, but out of context, they're just good songs. So Sean, jumping back to you, what would be your other top video game song that you would listen to that you could fool somebody into thinking is a real song? Or is a
That's
non-video
a good
game song? Sorry, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, oh god, that's a good question. Because a lot of like Metal Gear Rising songs came to mind as soon as you said that. Devil May Cry 5's I Am the Storm That's Approaching. I forget the name of that.
That's a great
but
one.
I have that one. And sure, some of those, even like Persona 5 has a lot of songs in there too that I think you could just put on and, oh yeah, it's jazz. I don't know jazz, so I'm going to listen to this. One that I saw pop off recently on like a lot of social media has been Aquatic Ambience from Donkey Kong Country, where a lot of people have been like, oh, where is this from? Blah, blah, blah. And like, it's an ambient song, absolutely. But it kind of shows how impactful even just like the smallest, like, because the Super Nintendo didn't really have like the kind of sound chips that you saw in, say, like PlayStation 1, even the Nintendo 64, which wasn't as great. But the interesting thing was Aquatic Ambience like still has a lot of that love thrown into it that I think a lot of people are now starting to realize, like, okay, no, this is actually, I've seen people even like comment about it, like, this is from Donkey Kong. I didn't know that they had actual music in that. And it's really interesting to see people's viewpoints on games like that change. And I wanted to jump into, because you were talking about Zelda and how they play these songs. It's like, we're going to play Zelda's Lullaby towards the end. Another game that I think does a really good job of spreading out songs and doing these really cool motifs is Kingdom Hearts. In Kingdom Hearts, everyone knows like the title screen that like immediately gets you. And they don't play that very often. There's a couple times where they play that. But there's theme songs throughout the entire series. Xions' theme is one of my favorite songs in that entire series. And in her song are parts of other people's songs. So like, for example, you get to hear Kyrie's theme played within it. You get to hear Sora's theme played within it. And you even get Roxas' theme played in it. And it's really interesting to me because it spreads these songs out so much that you get these little glimpses and like, oh, this, I know that. And you start to remember, you start to recollect, you start to like, oh, that, I remember it. And you start to equate those feelings with those notes to the point where it really sticks with you throughout all that time. Did you destroy your mic?
How would you know that if you haven't played Kingdom Hearts?
I was waiting on that.
As soon as he said it.
I know. I was.
I can't believe I forgot.
Yeah, we all do. I've played every single Kingdom Hearts except for the phone one.
I played them via Let's Plays on YouTube.
That's not true at all. It's right over there. But God, I knew it was coming. I knew the moment I said Kingdom Hearts, I like knew I had to keep talking or else it would have been said.
No, we all were there right immediately.
But it's really so like I started because I'm working on a video game right now and I really want to work on the soundtrack, so I'm starting to learn how to really listen in on like keyboards and what have you. And listening to the strings and the keys that they use throughout the Kingdom Hearts series is really interesting because of how simple it is, but how impactful those notes are because they connect to other parts throughout the game. And I think music in video games tell such an interesting story that sometimes you could just listen to like an entire album and kind of, well, soundtrack, whatever you may call it, but like you can kind of like get the feel of the emotions they're trying to portray during, key moments throughout a game.
Oh, it's even harder in Kingdom Hearts' case because they also have to match the motifs of Disney on top of the having their own Square influence. I'm assuming. I would think. I haven't played Kingdom Hearts, and I admit it.
Kind of. I would say yes and no. They don't really like. They try to go for the similar vibe of the Disney worlds outside of Frozen, where they just play the song for some stupid reason, and they don't even just play like a little bit of it. They play the entire Frozen
that's
song.
Not a surprise.
And it's like, it's one of those that like, I respect that they tried it, but I hate that it's the entire song,
Mm-hmm.
Now, Trav, I'm sorry, Sean, were you done?
Well, I was going to bring up another, go to Trav.
Okay. I was going to ask the same question to Trav. I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. Sorry.
It's all good. I'll cry about it later.
I heard the and I was like, filler. Let me jump in. Trav, you haven't spoken in a bit. You can't say Doom. Name a video game song that you think you would pass for traditional music as a way to convince people and be like, this is from a game. After they're like, oh, this is a really good song.
My first thought doesn't count, so I'll give you another one afterwards. My first thought was the soundtrack to Metal Hellsinger.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh.
Legitimately includes a ton of metal vocalists, including, I feel like I'm pronouncing it wrong, Serge Tankian. Serge
Tankian, yeah.
I always feel like the J should be silent. Don't know why.
What's your favorite song on there, by the way?
What's my what?
Favorite song on there?
This Devastation, probably.
Okay. I can see that.
Seconded by Tankian's song, which, if you don't know,
Tomorrow?
is the vocalist from System of a Down. Legitimately, like, just a good metal album on its own, but it's music made for a game.
It's very well done.
That feels like a cheap answer, though, because it was literally made like an album, and the music was... I guess mixed in a way that makes it work for the game.
Yeah, it's all on a good beat. They even had Randy Blythe in there, who I really like. Arch Enemy. Anyway, sorry.
They had the singer from Lamb of God, a bunch of others.
Randy Blythe.
I want to say in the main campaign, every song has a unique vocalist. I could be wrong.
Yeah, they all do.
Well, let's see. Let me think back a bit. A song that I could pass off as...
While you're thinking, I'll throw out one that maybe might stimulate your memory there. Anything from Sonic Frontiers. Any of the Kellen Quinn stuff. Because that is stuff that you can just listen to. I have that on my Spotify playlist because that is just good music.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people would have said Mario Odyssey too. The song
Jump Up
Mario
Superstar.
Odyssey.
That song was...
I could see that.
That song is incredible. I love that song.
Yeah. That was very popular. I'm sure people have that on their playlists and stuff like that.
Yeah. Assuming Nintendo didn't take it down.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Nintendo, have they put their stuff up on Spotify
I don't believe so.
Or ever?
Sega usually is the one who does.
Yeah,
Sega's really good about that.
Sega does that.
Capcom is recently also good at that.
Well, Travis is thinking of an idea. I'll throw out a song that I've listened to for, a decade plus, which is a song by Richie Havens. It's called Texas Lament, and it's on a game called the Pandora Directive. So it's an old game. Nobody's ever played it. Nobody's ever seen this, right? Nobody's heard this song.
Doesn't exist.
It's really, it's not on any, Spotify's or anything. You can find it out there on YouTube out in the world. But it's a really, really good song, and I think it's really pretty, and I like the sort of the message behind it and things like that. So there are music songs out there for sure that, I could play that, and you would never guess that it was from a video game.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thought that came to my head, building off of Sonic, I gotta go with like Sonic Adventure, anything Crush 40 from those games.
Yeah.
I want to say I did pass that off as not video game music because I grew up in a family much like you guys have discussed, where at least decade or two ago you'd be like, hello mother, this is music I like, and they're like, it's not real music, it is video game music, that's not real. But I think that because of that, like I literally burnt a bunch of YouTube videos onto a CD to play because I didn't know how to properly like rip music. So I just back in early YouTube days, like 2008 or so, found a really shady YouTube downloader, burnt a bunch of stuff to a CD, and when people would ask what it's from, I just say, oh, it's from an album. I don't know. Because I was too ashamed to be like, no, it's video game music, because I didn't want them immediately to write it off as something.
And the reason I said the Kellen Quinn stuff specifically was because none of that sounds like, none of the vocals or the lyrics rather sound like stuff that has to be in a video game. Like the Escape from the City, for example. If you know anything about Sonic, you know that song, the moment you listen to it, is a Sonic song. And a lot of Crush 40 stuff is that way. That's not a bad thing. I love the Crush 40 music, but that's stuff that I wasn't going to mention because there is that element of, why are these lyrics kind of sound corny? Are these actually lyrics, or are these like, is this a video game song?
Right.
I think that's valid.
Yeah.
There's sort of this, I think with a lot of music though, right? There's a difference between something that is made in sort of a commercial corporate way and something that is a song that is maybe more listenable or intended for listening.
Yeah.
For example, taking it out of video games just slightly, theme songs for TV shows, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm immediately thinking of Sims theme song for Attack on Titan. It's called The Rumbling.
Oh, that.
It's a really good song, super enjoyable, very listening. It's enjoyable. It's a good song. And if I were to tell you that that is a song that is an anime show theme song, right?
Yep.
The people who immediately don't like anime, rightly so, right? They would go, oh, well, that's a bad song inherently because of the topic, right?
I do that.
And I think
that
that happens with
music.
video games a lot too.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah.
That's a funny double standard too. Because then you have Friends, which is just a song.
Right. So funny thing that actually circling back to something that Trav talked about earlier, or maybe Kevin, maybe I'm stupid, but okay. Oh yeah, Kevin, whenever you talked about your one of your papers that you did about in school and whatnot, my senior exit paper, they allowed us to either just turn in a paper or get to say what's on your paper. You get to do like a speech and everything. And I love speeches. I love being in front of people talking. So what I had them do, because I wanted extra points, because I didn't want to be stupid and, fail.
So true.
But so I did my paper was on the Metal Gear Solid 4 ending, about how at some point in time, everything has to end, whether that be our heroes, our time together as friends, and what have you. And a song I played was Father and Son. And I made a person sit on it was like a Windows 98 computer. It was not 98. I did not graduate in 1998. Don't worry about that. Ooh. But it was like a Windows 98 computer. And I had him play Father and Son from Metal Gear Solid 4 at like a certain point. And afterwards, my teacher was like, who made that song? And I was like, oh, it's some composer. I forget his name. But I know he's like from Japan or something. I don't know his name. They're like, oh, that's like really cool. But it was like one of those really interesting moments where I got to use a video game song in like a real life situation where I got to see people actually really appreciate that. And then I had some like colleagues, peers, whatever, who gives a piss, who were asking me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that came from Metal Gear Solid. They're like, I don't remember that. And I told them it was from Metal Gear Solid 4. And
that's 30 hours into this game.
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, I don't own a PS3." I'm like, "That's
Death Stranding."
That's fair. But it's really interesting to me to see people's reaction whenever they don't know it's from a video game or like an anime. I've even played like a bunch of anime intros. Like I'll play like JoJo's intros to people, which I need to stop doing that in public places. But
You're just in the bathroom at an airport blasting JoJo music.
Yeah, I'm not even getting on a plane. I'm just there. But it's always been really interesting to me because like I grew up learning how to play instruments. I learned how to play guitar by reading, drums by ear, bass by ear, and piano by ear. So now I'm starting to like dive deeper into what makes this work? How do the notes work? How do you make this all work together? And to see pretty much like a storyboard with a lot of these songs is really interesting to me. But yeah, that's I don't know. That was just a random thought I had.
No, I'll
throw that away now.
I'll jump off of something you said because you gave me a really good bouncing point there. Mentioning Kojima, immediately when you said Metal Gear Solid 4, I thought of first Snake Eater, and then I thought afterwards, like you kind of mentioned, Trav, I then jumped to Death Stranding and how Kojima shifted from music that is specifically this overly, again, corny, lyrically stuff made for the video game into doing the James Gunn-esque curation of music for Death Stranding, using generally, published artist music that already existed and not having stuff created specifically for the song, with a couple exceptions near the end of the game. And I also think that approach is fascinating as much as it's, in Kojima's case, it usually comes off as artsy-fartsy. That James Gunn approach is what led me to find a bunch of really, really good songs from, for example, the Peacemaker soundtrack. The song from episode 3, what's it called? Shoot. 6 Feet Under. 6 Feet Under. That song, the moment I heard that, I was like, I need to find that song that's going on my playlist because that song is a banger. And I listened to more of their stuff, and none of it's really as good as that one. That makes sense that that's the one they chose. But again, that's also like seeing that video game directors are then now able to use their platform to almost act as their own shared playlist, their own mixtape.
Yeah.
Is fascinating.
Speaking of, you just reminded me. So, like, I really like Bear McCreary. He worked on the soundtrack for God of War, the first one in Ragnarok, and he ended up doing the music for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I have a lot to say about that. We're not going to go into that right now but his music, like, to hear it in both scenarios is like really interesting because, like, you can hear some like God of War essence in Lord of the Rings, which I thought was really interesting. And it's really cool that, like, he went from God of War to Lord of the Rings show to back to Ragnarok to doing a song with Hozier.
He was the Walking Dead composer before God of War as well, right?
I'm not sure if the entire series, but I remember he did work on some songs there.
I think he did the early stuff because I remember that name from that. Because then I heard that he was in God of War 2018, and I'm like, that's a weird choice. That show sucks now.
Yeah, but
not that he has anything to do with that, but you know.
Yeah, and but he's done like a lot of work, and it's really interesting to see like a composer go from The Walking Dead to God of War to Lord of the Rings to back to God of War. I haven't listened to the Valhalla stuff, but I don't know. It that to me just shows like the kind of range that, you know, this art form has, because he worked so hard with like a bunch of different singers. He had like orchestra people there, and it was just, I don't know, it was just so interesting to watch this man create music for two and a half things I really enjoy. Yeah, Moriarty, you haven't talked in a hot second, so I'm going to throw it to you.
There's lots of things out there, right? Like we can keep pointing out different songs and things like that.
Right.
We can point out Still Alive from Portal, right? And be like, look,
wow, how did I not think of that? Oh my God.
An incredible song that's clearly a video game song. Just listening to it, it's like, yeah, this is clearly a video game song.
That's so like 2010 music too, or whenever it came out.
And it's incredibly listenable. But I actually think it's more interesting to sort of see how these things are combining in a way. And I think that we've seen this from, as you mentioned, GTA or Saints Row, where they have these radios, and now to the day where you've got, Fortnite debuting songs and having Fortnite Festival with the Guitar Hero stuff in it and being able to have all these song emotes and having, all that kind of stuff in there with the radios. I mean, they did a big thing where they said, hey, Eminem radio this month. And imagine how many millions of dollars got spent to just have a month of exclusively Eminem songs on a radio that nobody's going to listen to because they're busy shooting people. So I think it's really interesting to sort of see this movement to where now music is finding its way into games, to the point where it is hard to point out a song that is from a video game that isn't either designed to be incredibly commercial or designed in some way to be very listenable or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of, I can see you pointing towards your Doom thing back there.
Oh, I'm adjusting it. No, that was unrelated.
Centering his frames.
I'm adjusting it. Sorry. Gotcha. I'm not trying to like talk shit about you by gesturing.
Audio listeners do not inquire.
Swear jar. Dang it.
That is very much the pointing meme right there. Just like
it really
back.
was.
We
it
all
was
have
like
one
pointing behind, looking.
We all
doomed.
have one.
So yeah, the point being that I think it's really interesting how it's evolving. That we have this sort of thing where now today. I would not be surprised if most working orchestras are not spending more of their time producing video game music than they are producing, or at least an equal amount of time producing video game music as they are producing movies and television. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these composers that we know are spending a lot of their time, again, working on video game compositions. And I think that is fascinating stuff, where to date, one of the highest selling symphonies this year, or I guess last year, was the Sonic Symphony.
That's what I was going to say.
Sold out instantly, right?
Yeah.
People want to go hear these things.
Yeah. Like I still regret that I wasn't able to do any of the Zelda symphonies because I just need to be at one of those at some point. And Nintendo is Nintendo, so they don't really do them that often.
Yeah.
And
actually,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, fun fact, I saw on Instagram that a place in London or somewhere in the UK, they're having an Elden Ring symphony, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
That's not something you expect, like, at all. But, like, I don't know. I thought that was really interesting.
It's an interesting title because, I mean, no shade on the Souls games, but, they're not nearly at the level of Sonic or Mario for getting their own, or Zelda for getting their own orchestra. So it's surprising, but it's totally deserved in my opinion.
And what'd be fascinating,
they have some great music
with Elden Ring. What'd be fascinating is you could do a regular performance that's entirely songs from Elden Ring or a Souls game, and not tell them ahead of time that it's from that, and people would just consume that at that show and be all uppity about it.
Yeah, Ludwig's song.
Yeah.
The Elden Ring theme. Oh, there's so many. I'm not going to dive into that because I could just talk about Soulsborne songs for like hours. Cleric
there
Beast,
is this sort of idea that new things can't be good, right? And so when you've got this classical music, when you're looking at Dvorak or whatever, and comparing that to what we've got in today's music, right? The Interstellar theme, End of Days or whatever it's called, is one of the most truly enjoyable classical music compositions that have been written in, I don't know, 100 years. And yet, if you played it for somebody and said, hey, look, here's somebody playing this on piano, right? It's like, oh, wow, that's incredible. Who is that? And then you named whatever, Christopher Nolan, right? It would go, oh, that's not classical music. And so there's this sort of weird bias against the medium that this music is delivered to you in. So is it something where it was written for, a prince in Prague in 1620? Now it's real music.
Yeah.
I think that's totally a thing. Like, I'm not even saying that like, oh, I thought you were wrong at first. No, like, I'm thinking about it more. And, like, there's this idea, and I'm not going to say friggin' Mozart was bad or anything, but there's this idea of, like, oh, well, I mean, they kind of just, like, pioneered this early form of music, or early, quote-unquote. There's a whole bunch of history we could talk about there that I'm not going to go into, of how, like, oh, well, like, if this was the first or earliest examples of this kind of music, that's good music. But then you go into,
current.
You have a guy that I don't know who the YouTuber was. I haven't seen him in years. This guy would just like play Zelda music out in public on a piano. And people would be like, oh, is this? And then they'd name some like old famous.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, like people would come up and be like, oh, is that I literally only Mozart is the only name coming to mind. But they'd be like, oh, is this old is that
Spielberg?
Is that
Is this Mozart? No, Mozart's washed. This is Genshin Impact.
No, this is Zelda. Like there are people, these people that are like, oh, this old music, this we're like almost unconditionally made to go, oh, this is good, like objectively good, and then we hear good music and go, oh, is this that old music that's really good? Wait, it's new? Oh, that's kind of cringe, actually.
It's just the concept of legacy. That's what a lot of it is.
And like I come from, so like I love metal music, and like there's so many metal elitists that like even with subgenres that kind of like really help
Sleep Token's not real music.
Your Sleep Token's not real metal.
Disturbed is cringe.
But then like you say like one bad thing about say like Guns N' Roses and you are
that's not even metal. What? That's not even metal. That's
that's what I mean. But then people are like, no, that's definitely metal.
Never been metal. It's mostly piano, sad boy music. I like Guns N' Roses.
I like it when they sing about sex.
Yeah, but I think that like for me, for example, that really helped me because like I said, I used to be a metal elitist. That was stupid of me. Despise it. But now, like, since I've kind of grown out of that, it really helped me to, I guess, show what I'm really into, like all sorts of other kinds of music that I'm into, whether that be video game music, anime music, television music, because there's some bangers out there that no one talks about. And now I'm just like, I don't really give a piss if you think this is music or not, because it is. You're wrong. Shut up. You're factually incorrect. I will fight you butt naked in the middle of Denny's parking lot. What are you going to do about it? Fight me back? Well, you're fighting a naked man. You're going to get arrested. Boom. Everybody wins.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. I'll say they took off my clothes. I don't know where to go after that.
If you want more of Sean fighting people naked and a bunch of extra exclusive content, such as discussions about different artists that our resident musician, All Hail Buckets, has had with just about each of us at this point, where he recommends music for us to listen to, and we then discuss it with him in a one-on-one setting so that he can attempt to broaden our horizons. That stuff is available at patreon.com/Crub. The founder tier is only $5 a month, and it'll be going away pretty imminently at this point. We don't have an exact date for that, but the tiers will be changing, so you can get everything we ever do forever for $5 a month over at patreon.com/Crub. And it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of exclusive bonus content. Mario Party game nights we have been doing lately, where we've recorded 6 episodes, and only 4 ended up working because of how chaotic Mario Party ends up being and how poorly it ends up going. It's not a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Also netplay.
It's mainly the netplay, honestly.
Yeah.
But with that, we're going to mention one of our Patreon questions of the week. That's one of the perks you get. You can ask us a question that we will answer live on air. This month's question comes from one Chefkilo, who asks... Once I find it in my search here. Where'd it go?
Home. It went home. I'm coming home.
I found it. Kilo asked, if Thanos recollected all the stones and snapped again, which 4 of the Crubcast would disappear?
Okay. So real quick.
Hopefully all of us.
I'm going to change this a little bit. I don't think Thanos takes the gauntlet. I think Moriarty is the one that takes it. So he's
Why
the one.
me?
Out of everybody, I feel like you'd be the one.
Are you saying I'm the villain?
I'm the
villain.
I'm saying out of everybody, you actually. I don't.
Okay.
Well, so what if M is the one who does the snap and then he disappears?
All right, so I'm snapping.
Yeah, but he disappears as a consequence of it.
Okay, so I'm one of them. I disappear.
Yes,
because that'd be good. That'd be good karmic justice for all that you've done.
Brody's immune because he's Canadian.
Makes sense.
I think Nico leaving would be funny.
No, I think because I think it'd be funnier if Nico was still there and then he talked about how much he missed us every day.
Yeah.
But he'd be really sad, and it'd be really funny.
Yeah. Or like he just doesn't know, we disappeared. He just continues to talk in the Discord like we're still there. He just doesn't
I'll level
know.
with you. I would want to be gone because half my subscribers would be gone, and it'd be harder to make money.
I'm gonna say Trav's gonna be gone.
Imagine the algorithm. If 50,000 of your subscribers disappear, then you're like,
that's a clickbait title.
Right? Like, imagine it's like, suddenly we have to. The Google engineers are gone. Also, like half of them, so they're all.
How
overworked.
did the blip affect the YouTube algorithm?
It would have sucked. It would have sucked.
Yeah, it would have. Moriarty's gone.
YouTubers everywhere can't eat anymore.
Trav's gonna disappear. Brody's immune. Nico's there. Justin would disappear for a little bit, but somehow come back. So I'm gonna count him. I don't know how he comes back. He'll just figure out a way. I'm gonna act like I disappear. I don't really. I'm just gonna dye my hair.
This is my out. I just disappear from society.
Yeah, I just disappear from society. And Kevin, I think you would disappear just willingly. Like the gauntlet would somehow know you want to go away, and just like, well.
What if the gauntlet took out all the depressed people, right? Like you snap it and all the people want to go.
Well, that's what Thanos wants, though. He wants a happy society, so he should have wished for half of the depressed people, or the half that is depressed, to go away.
Right? Yeah. Everyone else is just happy.
But then,
that would have been a good way to keep
ahead,
people from that would have been a good way for Marvel to actually make people hate Thanos, because there's a lot of people that think he's right.
Well, and a lot of those people that are depressed like Marvel, so it would be.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be really.
The problem is, if we got rid of all the depressed people, who's going to be making the coffee?
Well, there's that, and there's also the ignorance is bliss type thought process, where a lot of the people that are depressed have the curse of knowledge. Where they're like, I know the world sucks.
I think you're just describing a Sigma male.
Yeah.
No, Sigma males pretend they're not depressed. So that's different.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna change my YouTube account to Wolf KO Sigma. That's what I'm going to do.
You should. You should do that now.
I should not have said that out loud. That's awful.
If Crub hits 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2024,
absolutely not.
Wolf KO Sigma.
Yeah,
I
mean,
love
we'll have the shaved everything else but the mustache by then. So,
and I'll just have After Dark playing in the background.
That'll be the
the
branding.
I'm like a lone wolf. I know wolves hang out in packs, but I hang out alone.
I'm a lone wolf. I like to hang out with my pack, and my pack is just me and me alone. Also, don't forget to subscribe to me, but if you don't, that's okay, because I am all that I need. I'm going to lift
if my
this.
mouth picture is a different color now that it's nighttime.
Anyway, I answered my
Sigmas
question.
are the
Everyone else
king
go.
of-
Just because it happened, 3 different people in our Twitch chat said Justin is the Ant-Man of the group. All in once, right? Justin is the Ant-Man of the group.
It actually
Justin's the
did.
Ant-Man of the group. Justin is the Ant-Man.
It's not even like it was a repeated meme. Like they all independently came to that thought.
And they all said it at the same time. I love it.
So is Justin then going to try and kill M by going
is that
into M's
because
butt
of
and
the-
expanding?
Yeah,
No, he's
I
already
was just
gone.
going to ask, is it because of that meme? Like, is that why we're associating Justin with this?
You know, I don't think we need an answer to this question. It's been great being here this week.
J Tart 9
This was a
inches.
great pod.
Am I the only one who answered the question? Hold on.
You answered for all of us.
You answered for all of us. What do you mean?
Ooh,
Okay,
while we're
that's-
talking about Twitch chat, someone in chat said, "Who is Kang then?" Also Justin, because he
Oh,
would
who
be
did you
he would be
recast?
gone. We would recast him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a good discussion. I think we had a lot of fun, a lot of productive discussion here. Any final thoughts on video game music before we call it a day here on the Crubcast?
It took a lot of effort for me to not talk about Doom.
Yeah. I'm very proud of you. Which also, Killer Instinct, very good soundtrack.
I almost
Really
mentioned
good
that too,
soundtrack,
and I'm like,
actually.
nope, that's Mick Gordon. That's
That's a
associated by
workaround from Doom.
Proxy. Yeah, that's.
Yep.
I mean, literally, the track for Full Gore sounds like Doom 2016.
Oh,
1
absolutely.
to 1.
So good.
So,
But
First-person shooters have some of the best soundtracks I've ever heard.
it's true. Have you ever heard the soundtrack to
Half-Life-
Super 3D Noah's Ark?
Right. Half-Life
Yeah.
2, Left 4 Dead, Doom, Doom Eternal, Bioshock, Far Cry, Metro, Borderlands, Call of Duty. I mean, they're all really... Battlefield. The Battlefield theme is just enjoyable.
I miss
Fear is
Battlefield.
great. Prey is great. The 2017
Oh my
Prey.
God, Prey.
The
Prey's
whole
very good.
Wolfenstein series, you know, I mean, just Halo, everything. System Shock 2, the remake, which I've been playing again, has some of the coolest sound and music.
Dude.
So good.
The reactor music in that game is like
It's just really good.
probably one of my favorite music tracks from 2023 from a video
Yeah,
game.
and it's adaptive and dynamic, and yet still manages to just be this incredible experience. There's so much music out there, and so I think that the whole concept of is it music is so dumb. Of course it is. And
It's a
go
waste. It's
experience
a waste
it.
of breath to even have that
Yeah.
discussion. It's better to just recommend.
which is why
cool
we
music.
monetized it.
Yeah,
Which is why
well,
we
we
monetized
didn't waste our breath with that discussion. We wasted our breath by sharing a bunch of really good video game music with you and talking about what it means to us. So we will see you next week for another episode of the Crubcast. We don't have an outro still.